Hi, everybody.
Hello.
We're back. And what we wanted to talk about this week is something that Dr. Doug Lisle and a lot of other researchers and doctors are calling the pleasure trap, and how it is that we have this mechanism in our bodies to go for certain foods that can create problems. We can get addicted to food.
I love one of the examples he gives because it's so dramatic is if you were to learn to ride a bicycle and every time you fell you had an orgasm, would you ever learn to ride the bicycle? And that kind of heightened experience is what today's processed foods that have deleted all the fiber and the water from them
And nutrients.
and are very high in oil, fat, and sugar
Yeah.
create in our brains.
Yeah, right. So this is a feedback loop that's common to every human being. And when we were evolving, it was a very useful thing.
Yeah.
Because it helped us to prepare for periods of lack or famine, to prevent starvation.
How did it
So,
do that?
yeah, it basically is that when we ate foods that had good energy, carbohydrates in it, we'd get a little hit of dopamine. It would feel good,
Yeah.
the orgasm.
Right. In the bicycle.
On the bicycle. But when we were evolving, all we had was whole foods, so you never got high concentrations of these carbohydrates or fat and oil or salt. But this feedback loop gives us a dopamine hit for carbohydrate, basically high calories or salt. So carbohydrates and fat have a lot of calories in them, and that was useful when we were evolving because then we would put on the extra weight we needed to get through the winter. But then when we started manufacturing food, when we started processing and pulling out the fiber and the nutrients and making it really easy to chew and digest and all that.
In the water, so they were very dry foods.
Right. And so there were a lot of calories per pound. Then we started creating a situation where we were actually drawn to fall off the bike, to eat processed foods instead of whole foods.
Because then we'd get the dopamine hit.
Then
So
you get the
we'd
dopamine
want
hit.
more, give me more, give me more.
Right. So when I first met Connie, and I was in all this pain, all this inflammation in my body, and she started cooking kale for me. Initially, it was like, how could I possibly live like this? Because I had been so accustomed to a dopamine hit coming with the food I ate, processed foods I was eating, and the dairy, that it just didn't make sense to my brain. But it didn't take long. Fortunately, our taste buds can change pretty quickly. And in a couple of weeks, it's like, well, this isn't too bad. And actually, in a few months, it was getting to where I actually, my body would go, let's have some greens.
Yeah, it really loves those greens
Right.
because they're very high in nutrients,
Right.
fiber, and water.
Right. So if you find yourself kind of caught in that pleasure trap with poor quality foods, the low nutrient dense foods that create this dopamine, if you find yourself falling off the bike for the pleasure that you get from doing it, then what we suggest is really pay attention to just eating whole foods. You see, that natural diet that we evolved with still generates the dopamine, but in smaller quantities. And once we get accustomed to eating just whole foods, the high fiber, high water content foods that were so natural to our diet, then this being accustomed to that high level of dopamine coming with food that we've adjusted to,
Yeah.
then in time it starts coming back down to where that lower amount of dopamine is really satisfying.
Yeah, and we can restore health, we can lose weight naturally, we get more mental clarity, we feel more joyful, we feel more alive. What more do we want?
Yeah.
We were intended to eat foods that are high nutrient,
whole,
Whole,
and organic.
organic.
Right. And for the most part, plant-based. If we look back at our ancestors, actually, if we did evolve from chimpanzees or gorillas or whatever, you look at their diet, and it's primarily plant-based. So we aren't trying to convince you to go whole food plant-based, but we would suggest you give it a try and see if you are caught in this pleasure trap, if it really helps you shift out of that. And so again, what seems to provide the body with high levels of health and actually plenty of satisfaction are a wide variety of organic, high nutrient dense, whole plant-based foods.
It's how we were intended to eat. Try it out and see for yourself. Don't believe us.
Yeah.
I'm more of the mindset that once you try it, it'll be how you want to live, because it's worked miracles in our lives.
Yeah, yeah. And part of the reason we think you'll really like it is because it seems to us that that is coming back more into our true nature. Coming back
That's
to the
a good
diet.
point.
Coming back to the diet that we evolved with, really, in a way, we see as coming back to a more natural lifestyle. And what we experience, or what we hear from our clients, is when they make this shift from more of a standard North American diet or European diet, they start having more clarity and more energy and more vitality, which is our birthright.
Yeah,
We were born to thrive,
we were.
and it really seems to provide that.
And the recipe today is from our dear friend Morena in South Africa. And it's a wonderful recipe. It's a cranberry brown rice salad.
Yeah.
Dried cranberries. Oh, it's so good with lots of leafy greens and yellow peppers and a wonderful dressing that we're going to show you that's made from beans instead of nuts and seeds.
Yeah. So
Even more high water content, high fiber food.
low fat.
Yeah.
Yeah. So enjoy.